Hi,
Hi, Lynn.
hear me?
I
Yep.
can hear you. Hello.
Great.
Hi, Fran.
Hello there. I know
Marie.
someplace in here, I gotta find a video. There it is.
Mhm.
Hello.
Hi.
Fran,
How you
did you ever
doing?
get any information about Trevor Knight?
About, I'm sorry? No, I didn't. I'm gonna table it. I was gonna ask to table it because I don't know anything about him. I think Jeff
Jeff,
was
do you
gonna
have
ask.
Ruth
Now,
Ann?
all I have is the recommendation from the rec commission. So I talked to Fran earlier, so I'm gonna ask Trevor for either a resume or ask him to send a letter of interest, and kind of why he feels he's qualified, so he can pass it on to the board.
How many members are there currently on the rec?
4, there is a vacancy. There's been a vacancy for about a year on it.
Who's on that besides Ruth Ann? Steve Etta?
Steve Etta, Jigum, and the newest member was Tweeps Phillips,
Right. Mhm.
no relation.
And we have a vacancy on the ZBA.
We have one on the ZBA, we have
One on planning.
one on planning.
Who left planning?
Donald
Now,
McDonald.
Who
now
left?
planning, Dave Marion, he had been serving as an alternate and he stopped doing that. It's been a while. There's been an opening there for a while.
Donald was what, ZBA?
Yes.
Correct.
So now we're gonna have 2. Oh no, ZBA, okay. And we're gonna have one on HDRB. With Kathleen.
Correct.
And when is Aaron's tenure end?
The end of November. At the end of this village year.
So I think we should have a conversation about if Trevor is a good candidate, where should he really go?
I don't know him at all. Do you know him, Marie?
I just Googled him. It looks like he lives on Marion Avenue. I assume he lives next door to Karen Doyle.
He does live on Marion.
Yeah, I assume he lives next to, he had been if this is the guy I'm thinking of, he had been attending a number of meetings after he first moved to the village. And I believe he had expressed his interest to Dave about becoming more involved.
When I first started, I felt recreation was an easy way to start because some of the stuff required more in-depth knowledge than I felt I had, like planning and zoning and those things. So recreation was a little bit more, you could sort of fly with it.
I think I recall who you're talking about. I recall him coming to some of our meetings.
Yeah.
And introducing himself several times.
I thought so, yeah.
That's the most I know about him.
Hmm.
But you're right, Fran. I think that's a great introduction into village workings, for people who want to contribute to their community.
However, we may be down to 3 people on ZBA.
We may be down to 3 people in zoning.
Yep.
Unless we can convince Aaron to stay on.
He wants to leave?
I believe he will.
Oh.
Well, now he may stay on, but not as chair. I don't know what his thinking is.
Mm-hmm. And how do we know this?
Rumor, the
did we-
grapevine,
Oh.
the rumors that I get when I go to Food Town.
How was your vacation, Lynn?
Oh my God, it's such a shock coming back. I mean, we were swimming in the ocean.
And now it's gonna snow Friday. Hang in.
I know. The trip back took longer than we thought. I mean, it was a long drive anyway, but the trip back took longer. We were delayed because we were caught in the middle of a prison break.
Oh geez, where?
Yeah, it was a prison break and they had like closed all the roads. And this is like way southeast North Carolina. And there were,
Oh, wow.
it was like cops everywhere, but nobody was moving anywhere. So we just sat there for like an hour.
Don't open the windows or the doors. Don't say hello to anybody.
But it was great. Polly's Island, if you ever have a chance to go there, it's really just really beautiful. It's ocean on one side, you cross a narrow little lane, and then you got a dock to fish in the river behind you. So yeah, it was great.
I can remember when there were escapes from Madiwan. And
Yeah,
I'm serious, and people were told to lock their doors.
yeah. Yeah, it was a little, I mean, we weren't scared or anything. It's just inconvenient. Really,
Yeah.
more than anything. We just wanted to get home.
Dave, before the meeting begins, Trevor Knight, is he the guy that had been coming to a number of meetings?
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
Should he be considered alternatively for ZBA or planning or HDRP? Not interested in either of the three?
Nah, he didn't want to jump into those. So I asked him a couple of times. So happy to have him here. Maybe he'll move on from there, hopefully.
What can you tell us about him?
About besides having a good feeling about him, I don't know. I mean, he just, he approached us at the meeting, or me at the meeting we had at the firehouse, and asked if there's anything he could do. He'd be glad to do it. And then I, had some back and forth with him. Nothing much though. He lives up in Marion.
Does he live next to Karen Doyle?
I don't know if he lives there. Well, he's got to live next. There's only three. I think he might be the second house. He was having a problem with a split driveway, so it wasn't Karen. Right next to Pete Henderson.
Oh,
on one side.
I thought a Russian family lived next to Pete.
I don't know. Is Pete's the first house?
Yeah, it's Pete, then the Russians, then Karen, then where Janice used to live.
Right.
And then the last one.
So maybe he's the second to last.
Yeah, I think he is where Janice used to live.
Right.
Yeah. So he's next to Karen.
I guess. He seems a really nice guy. He went in front of the rec commissioner, went to their last meeting, and they recommended him. So
I was going to ask to table it because I know nothing about him, and we're trying to get a resume or a letter or something. But if you guys know him, I'll ride with you. I know nothing about him, and I haven't seen anything about him.
He's the only guy that's ever come to any of our meetings.
Yeah.
Okay, other than the fact that I know there was a guy sitting in the meeting, I know nothing about him.
Right.
He has a pulse.
That's good.
Walks. He's,
As a
I forget
dog,
what he does.
dog owner.
Actually, I should know what he does, but I can't remember.
He can string a coherent sentence together. That's nice.
What's that?
He can string a coherent sentence together.
Right. Yes, he can. There's a lot of bonuses going on here. He has a pulse and he can put a sentence together. And he comes to our meetings. Maybe that's reason not to have him. What are you doing here?
That's a reason to grab him.
Yeah. If they're recommending him, and I would recommend him. I have no reason to believe anything. We're not going to do a background check on him. He's on the recreation committee.
I trust Ruth Ann's judgment on people too.
Yeah, so do I. So. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Ready to go.
Okay, we up and running, Jeff?
We're up and running. There's right now there's only 2 people. I just let in Heidi and Mike Turton.
Okay. All right, good evening, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order and we'll see if we can get through some stuff and actually get to the CUC stuff tonight. Do my best. So here we go, rock and roll. First up is the appointment of Trevor Knight to the Rec Commission. It's a recommendation sent by the chair of the Rec Commission, Ruth Ann Cullenbar. On Tuesday, the 20th, the Recreation Commission interviewed Trevor Knight for the remaining position on the Recreation Commission, reviewed with him the roles and responsibilities of the commission, and we were impressed with his credentials and his willingness to volunteer. Rec Commission recommends that Trevor Knight be appointed to the commission. We've met, the board members have seen Trevor at our meetings, one of the only folk that did show up when we were having in live meetings. And I talked to him early on, like probably a year or so ago, and he was willing to, he wanted to get involved with the village. So he's relatively a new resident and seems like a very capable person. So I'll make a motion to appoint Trevor Knight to the Rec Commission for recommendation of the chair, Ruth Ann Cullenbar.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Next is our yearly resolution 18, 2020, suspending on-street parking regulations on Marion Avenue. I believe these are for the winter months. Whereas Village of Cold Spring has on-street parking regulations which limit or prohibit on-street parking at certain times and locations, and whereas the Village of Cold Spring conducts snow clearing on the streets during winter months, and whereas snow clearing activity in the vicinity of Marion Avenue and Benedict Road could be better conducted and coordinated with local residents if the village's on-street parking regulations are suspended on the dead-end portion of Marion Avenue south of Benedict Road to allow parked vehicles to remain thereon. And now therefore be resolved as follows: the Village Board of Cold Spring hereby suspends on-street parking regulations for the end portion of Marion Avenue south of Benedict Road from November 15th, 2020 until April 15th, 2021. And a copy of this resolution shall be posted at the Village Hall and provided to the Village Police Department forthwith. So I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution 18, 2020, suspension of street parking on Marion Avenue.
Second,
Roll call.
Mayor Morandi,
Aye.
trustee Early,
yes.
trustee Miller,
Yes.
trustee Murphy,
Yes.
and trustee Veloto.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Third is to accept the resignation of Donald McDonald from the Zoning Board of Appeals. This came as a bit of a shock, although Donald's been with the village for decades, I believe, seemingly. It's a big loss for the village and for the plan and for the zoning, the ZBA. Donald's a great member. He chaired for many years and then was off for a bit and came back and gave us a few more years, and maybe one of the tougher zoning applications recently he chaired, and along with the rest of the board did I think a fantastic job of coming up with a decision on that issue. So I'll really miss Donald. I wish him all the best. You definitely need time on your own and not being involved so much. So all the best to Donald. I totally appreciate his work, and I'm a big fan of Donald from way back, I think before I was on any boards, and went to one of the meetings at the firehouse. I'm not sure what the issue was, but he just ran a great meeting. And so I'll miss you, Donald, and best of luck. So I'll make I think Marie, you've had quite a bit of experience with Donald. Yes?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Would
Yeah.
you like to say a few words?
He's fantastic. His knowledge of the zoning board, of those village zoning, his interpretation of things, the ability to bring insights from other communities to the village of Cold Spring has been always tremendously appreciated. The amount of time that he spends, as you said, is a magnitude greater than what it would seem to require. His the handling of the last event in the village. I was tremendously impressed by the intensity of the thinking that all members of the board put into their conclusions. And that was under Donald's stewardship. As you know, he was a temporary chair for that event. So he will be terribly missed, and the village is losing an incredible resource.
Totally agree. Thank you. So I will make a motion to reluctantly and sadly accept Donald McDonald's resignation from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'll
I
second
second.
that.
Go ahead, Fran.
Okay, I've got that.
Brenna has a second. All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay, next is approval of application to film in the village. Not sure who knows the most on this. I read through it. Jeff, are you familiar with this?
A little bit. It's Alex Carone, his company. It's a quick commercial. They're gonna be doing mostly private residences, his own, and then some in Nelsonville. But he doesn't want to get some street shots. The crew will be less than 10 people. He said 5 to 8 people when they're doing the street shots. It'll be 1 day, 1.5 days at the most.
And from what I read, I think it's all hand cameras.
Yeah.
And extensive health precautions as well.
Yeah, yes, definitely read through all that. So
Yeah.
that's good. Okay, so anyone else have any discussion on that?
Only one thing I noticed on the application here, on the second page, in the hold harmless part and the defend and indemnify Village of Cold Spring, it says bold harmless instead of hold harmless. So I assume that's incorrect.
Oh,
Okay.
That's it.
good catch.
Has it been like that for the last 2 years?
Yes. Yes, it has been.
Added that
All
today.
right. I guess that's the first time I read it then. Shows my,
Nicely done.
Good catch, Steve.
took a while, you know? Had to see it a few times.
And Alex will come in tomorrow to have this notarized. When he dropped it off, Kathy was not there
Okay,
on Friday, so he will be back to notarize it and pay the.
and
whatever.
does that also include a insurance? Do we need an insurance certificate from him or?
Yes, and he already provided that.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion to approve the application by Alex Carone for the film in the village.
a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, fun topic, the discussion on parking. I had the audacity to run a little trial down at the Mayor's Park on Saturday with the help of Kathleen Foley and John Martin. They both volunteered, and 2 people, Nico, our ticket giver, and also Bugsy worked with us. We paid them for the day. And basically the reason for this is we needed to, I needed to see if it would alleviate any pressure in the village. As everyone should know, the amount of traffic in the last month has been incredible. The parking has been all over and everywhere, in every spot and space that's open. Someone will feel that that's a fair game, and it's a musical chair all day with people circling around. Since it was the last Saturday of, I believe, foliage season, I think it was probably peak. I'm not sure what this weekend will bring, a little bit colder. I took action. I had some signs printed, tickets printed on Friday, actually, and kind of organized everything on Saturday. We did talk about this a bit, but didn't have a resolution. I think some people might be upset about that. Anyway, I think it was something that really had to be done. so that we could understand a little better of what having additional parking might do. Let's see, I did write some notes, so I'll run through those. As I said, we did discuss this briefly, but we didn't have the time. I didn't have time to get a resolution on it or just to get a vote on it. So hopefully the board isn't really angry at me. Some citizens maybe. I'd like to just emphasize this was a test. If we were going to do this any permanently or for more, we just did it one day. We didn't do it the following Sunday. It takes a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of work. And so I'm not sure if it would ever even be worth it, or if it's maybe something we could do during like peak season. And it would definitely be out in the public for their comment on it if we do so. I didn't have time to do all of that. Season would have been over. This weekends were perfect for counting cars, counting parking spaces, seeing where people parked, seeing the amount of people, seeing how hikers, how many hikers there were. It was pretty enlightening down there, the steady stream of everything. So let's see. So first taking into consideration, was the field and the condition of the field and whether or not it would be wrecked or not, or if it was wet, or, that was the main concern on my part to even try this. There was some dew in the morning. Basically, the field's really dry. It's not in great shape. It's usually covered with geese droppings. And we just did it in what would be considered the outfield, which is the southern portion, probably the quarter of the field. Basketball courts were open, as was 3/4 of the field, and the pavilion was opened, and none of that was being used except for the basketball courts. A few guys, locals were on those courts. Let's see. So everything was pretty much accessible except for that quarter of the field. Let's see. The baseball infield is usually something we try to protect no matter what we do down there. I mean, we've had a number of different events down there, the beer festival, the wine festival, we've had car shows, and we always stay off of the ball field. So that was, we coned that off. Bugsy ran cones around the whole perimeter of the area we're using. And so we didn't go near that. Let's see. So, and another thing, we requested the cars were to be off the field by 6 o'clock. When 6 o'clock came around, 5 cars were still there. So I had to ask the officer in charge or the officer on duty if he would lock the gates. So that's one thing learned. No damage was done to the field. A few notes, and I'll do a report on this and give it to everyone so we can use it with the parking committee. There's approximately 38 diagonal spaces which were sold in front, running along 9D. We sold those 38 spaces. Well, go back a bit. The cost for a space was $20 per space for the day. So there were 38 diagonal spaces along 9D. We sold those out in 2 hours, between 9 and 11. Some cars didn't stay the entire day, so we were able to sell a second round of tickets. There were probably about 20 or so sold on both the field and in those lots. The field held approximately, the area we used was probably 137 cars. And we sold approximately 20 spaces, like I said, both inside and outside the field. We were able to sell another round of tickets. Nobody there, hardly anyone, I think like maybe one person kind of grumbled a little bit, but everyone else was pretty much just handing us the money and was happy to find a spot. I'm sure they circled around the village a few times. You could see everyone circling around the municipal lot and coming out. The gross raised was $3,900 according to Jeff's count. So he boosted mine by 100. So it's $3,901. The $1 was like this extra. I can't remember why the person gave it to me or how that happened, but anyway, there is an odd $1 in there. The cost for Bugsy and Nico with benefits and FICA was $646.68. So the net profit, but this is before, we haven't gotten the invoice for signs and tickets made. The profit, the net so far is $3,254.32. So I would say probably $3,000 is going to be the net profit one could make. But that's using volunteers. So if we did want to do this and have employees do it, that would knock that cost, the profit way down on that. One other thing we could have is if we did think about doing this and we wanted to use the field, you could have like not-for-profits run it as one possibility, or maybe a combination of both. No, but we should discuss that at the meeting. Let's see. I have to say it was an exhausting 10 hours. It was nonstop. We just started giving out tickets and people just kept coming in and coming and coming and coming. And then they started going and going and going, and which you had to be a little more careful for it because all the people from the trails were all heading back at the same time, just before dark. All the people were trying to pull out from the parking lot. So, Bugsy and I were the only ones remaining at that time. And so you had to be really careful about cars pulling out, and either hitting people or being hit by cars. So it was a full day of pretty much nonstop action. I do want to thank Riverview, sent down a couple of pizzas. So thank you, Jimmy, for that. And Peggy Schatzel brought over a couple of cold waters. So that was also good. Anyway, I'll rate this up as a report. I felt actually that it's an emergency situation, what's going on in the village. I think we really have to get on top of it. I think, I'm not sure, I haven't talked to, I think Ken Baker was on duty, and I'm not sure who the other officer was, and seeing if it alleviated any problems in the village or took some of the pressure off parking. I have a feeling it might not have, but at least we'll know. It's close to 200 cars that would have been parking somewhere, I guess, or maybe they go home. I don't know. So I think it was definitely a worthwhile venture, and it, brought in brought in $3,000. So that's not bad either.
Dave, one question. You said in the beginning there were like 38 cars on 9D. You meant Fair Street, right?
On Fair Street, yes, sorry. Yes, yes, thank you.
Where did we go?
But yeah, no, we didn't give up there. I know that all the parking was, on Sunday, I walked around the whole village actually doing parking counts on the streets because it was full. So it was easy to see how many cars could actually park. And there were cars all up kind of curling around Furnace Street. Probably one car was probably shouldn't have been in there, was on the east side. There was cars lining all the way up Wall Street from Marion to Wall. I mean, and that makes that very narrow, or it's pretty narrow there. All the parking lots were full all over, like Haldane's lot on 90 is totally full. All of Northern Avenue on both sides where you can park was full. All the side streets were full, though, and cars were just circling around constantly while I was out there. I'm sure if you live in the village like you do, Fran, you probably noticed that. But anyway, I've got a few people that have volunteered for the parking committee, so I'll get that together this week, and we'll come up with a date and get that rolling.
Said you had some complaints about. Did you get
about
emails or something about the parking?
Yeah, there were complaints that I think there were a number. One, how dare I actually use that field without going through protocol, I guess would be the word. I guess some people just don't want it to be used for tourists or visitors, or don't want it to be used. I don't know, but there were some angry people, some usual angry people, and some others that probably, feel like it's it's a resource that should be the villages and we shouldn't be using for that, which I can understand. And before we do anything there or do anything in the future there, they'll definitely be putting it out there. But there were a number of people, I think Fran had one comment from a person said they weren't happy with that, and we shouldn't be using it for parking. So,
I had invited them to come to this meeting or to send something in writing. I don't know if they did either. I know they're not in the meeting. I don't believe I asked them to send something in writing addressed to you and to send it to Jeff, and I don't believe Jeff has received anything, so it may come later, but.
I think there were assumption on some people, and that's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction was that we were doing this every day and we're just going to do it, you know. So, which isn't the case, but I think that was a big concern, that we all of a sudden decided we're going to make that parking all the time, and also there was someone that thought I was pocketing the money. So one of my
Come on, we know how much.
favorite haters, but. Anyway, yeah, I really lined my pockets, and Bugsy did, and we've been having a great time. We're heading out on vacation soon. We do have photos probably from John Martin. We can take a picture of how many cars are there, and if somebody really wants to get down to it and see if any money's missing. That's definitely, we could do that.
Did you do Sunday also?
No. No,
Okay.
I wouldn't dare do Sunday. I thought also not doing Sunday, then you'd probably have the same amount of people, which there were around, and could tell if there was, you know, kind of an impact from having extra parking for 200 or not. So we need to talk.
Do you get a sense of the difference between Saturday and Sunday? You know, just in the village in general?
I think we'd have to talk to the officers that were on duty and see if they felt that there was a difference. I wasn't really around, but I don't know how the parking was in the rest of the village on Saturday, since I was down there, or if there was any more or less than on Sunday. I think that would be the question. Or anyway, not a perfect study, but anyway.
Hey, you know, it's a stab in the right direction, you know, it's just.
Yeah.
So.
Well, one of the things is people, you know, think that more and more parking or better parking is going to solve a problem. And I don't know if that's necessarily true. I mean, we could put up 200, you know, fit 400 people down there, but is that going to do anything besides fit 400 people there and the village will still be packed? That's the question I would pose to everyone.
Yeah. That's going to be difficult to quantify.
Yeah, really. I think so.
Yeah. Who knows how many people just leave, you know? That'd be one way to find out, if we open the field up totally and see how full it got.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, and if it totally filled, then you'd know, wow. Because I'm sure a lot of people like, shit, there's nowhere to park. I don't want to drive around anymore. And then they finally get discouraged, you know?
I would think, I was wondering.
Did you get a sense, Dave, that where people were going after they parked there? Did they mostly go to the trails, or did they go into the village?
I would say 95% went to the trails. Almost everyone went to the trails. Some people went, a few people went, you know, some few elderly folk that, you know, got out and were heading up to the village. But I would say 95% or 90 at the very least would be safe. And the whole time we're there, I think we had a clicker for a while, but then Kathleen left, and I'm not the person you give a clicker to. And there had to be there were at least 2,000 people that had walked by. One of the problems is that this kind of created was before that we had cones along Fair Street in front on the diagonal, so everyone walked there. But since we had cars there, all the people mostly returning, it was like herds. Literally, and they're just in the road, so it became a one-way street going. But most of the traffic goes south, from north to south, which was a good thing to know. So it's easier to park diagonally, and all the people were heading south to go to the train, and pretty much you could head south one way on Fair Street. And you just had to avoid the people. Hardly any other people came from the south. Mostly everyone came from the north heading. I think I might have reversed that. People were coming from the north, and the traffic was driving from the north coming south.
Dave, when they first started talking about the fjord trail, they were talking about running it along there, and I know they're not doing that right now. But part of that plan was to move our fence in, and I believe we had agreed to move that fence in a couple of feet. So if we could do that and make that a walking path between the cars parked and, you know, a walking path for people to walk, it would be, I don't know how expensive that would be, but it would at least save people from walking in the middle of the street.
I think what happened with that was, one, I think Phillipstown was going to pay for a sidewalk to be put in, and we were going to move back, and we were going to do some of the labor or whatever in-kind work, moving the fence back toward the dugout and put the sidewalk there. But then I believe, and that was, I think they got a grant for that, Phillipstown, or had money set aside for that, earmarked for that. And if I remember right, and they got quotes in, which were like way more than they thought they would be. And so they never went ahead with it. Now the Fjord Trail is, the plan now is to start at Dockside and to run along the tracks on the river side to get the little stony point, which would eliminate, in theory, all the hikers walking on Fair Street and through the village. They would, if they were coming off the train, they'd be directed down the Dockside, and then through Dockside along, they're gonna have like a boardwalk on the side, cantilevered over the Hudson, going down to Little Stony Point, and then the same continuing from Little Stony Point to Breakneck. So I don't think putting a sidewalk in would be worthwhile. It would also be costly, unless somebody would.
I was thinking of even just gravel or something, just leave it dirt.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, it would still take quite a bit to move everything back. I'm not sure if it would be worth it, or if they would even walk on the sidewalk. I mean, they don't walk on the sidewalk from rest of Fair Street. So anyway, that's something we can definitely discuss, though. I mean, it's definitely an option. Whether or not they would use it or not, it would be in front of the cars. It would be good to have there if everyone used it, but I'm not sure if they would. And then once you got to the end of our parking lot, then it's like that whole section from the end by the pavilion all the way down. There's nothing there, and that's county, I believe. All right. So any other questions on that or anything? Sorry, I moved ahead quickly. Hopefully you guys aren't angry with me.
Not at all.
I'll never do it again.
Oh, go ahead.
I probably will. Sue me. I think
We did discuss the idea at the meeting last week.
What's that?
We did discuss it at the meeting as a board last week, so
Yeah.
you weren't totally out on your own there.
I did take that final steps. I took the plunge.
I'm willing to forgive you this time. That's
Thank
all.
you. Thank you, Steve.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate that. All right, so moving ahead, I will get a report to you guys on the whole thing, and I'll do a layout of how everything was parked if anyone wants to do it again, and bring that to the parking committee. Okay, next up is approval of minutes. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the Village Board of Trustees, October 20th, 20 meeting.
Second.
We have a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Right?
Aye.
Oh, sorry, did you say something, Lynn?
No, I said aye.
Oh, okay. Sorry. So with that, that's the end of our regular agenda before we get into review. So if there's anyone on the phones or on the Zoomo that would like to participate publicly.
Kathleen had her hand up, though she put it down, so I'm gonna unmute her to see if she has a comment.
Hi, I was just going to remind Dave about the clicker.
I have the clicker.
No, that you have it, but that so for most of the day, I stayed till about 3. I made my best attempt to count the number of people getting out of each vehicle as they parked and the people walking past on both sides of the street. And they were walking on both sides of the street. So it's not obviously an exactly accurate count of the people on Fair Street, but by 3 o'clock, it was up around 900. So, it was not a small number, and that doesn't include anybody who was looping through cars and then ending up parking in other parts of the village. So, when the county says, how do we let these folks in? I mean, it's clear that it's not a way to control, and it is really right now droves, even by a conservative estimate.
Agreed. Anyone else, Jeff? Thank you,
Hey,
Kevin.
Mike Turton has his hand up.
Yep, Mike Turton has his hand up. No hat on.
Hi, Mike.
No hat on though. Anyways, Dave, I just wondered if, did you happen to look at the Metro North lot at all over the weekend?
Unfortunately, no, I did
Okay.
not.
Okay.
I did follow up with our liaison, Neil, tonight. Actually, I wrote him an email just before this meeting asking him if he would, Neil Zuckerman, if he would bring a few requests to Metro North. One being, is there a way we can have some sign directing, for free parking, since we're being abused by all the people that they're dropping off. The second request was, let's see, if they would, I believe the visitor center was a grant from Metro North. I'm not positive on that, but I asked him if he could run that by. I said, this is probably a snowball's chance in hell, but all the people that are coming off of the train, thousands, are all lining up and abusing our areas and our infrastructure, and would request some help from them. So that was a second request. Third is if he could find out if they would consider at all selling the property to they own a strip that's between Springbrook and on the east side and the platform. I'm not sure if they have any something future use for that, but if they're not, we might be able to add with that.
It's Forge Gate. They own a strip between Forge Gate and the northbound platform.
I'm really messing up tonight. 90 Fair Street.
That would be me between Springbrook and Forge Gate. I always get them messed up.
So anyway, it's Forge Gate. There's a piece then that you could maybe access from one terrace. That might be really crazy, but while I was making some asks, I thought I'd include that. So those are three things that I sent to Neil tonight. He said he would do his best.
Hey, thank you.
Yep. Anyone else, Jeff?
That's it.
Evan Hudson's here. Can I make a public comment?
You sure can.
Hi. Yeah, thanks, Mayor and Board, for letting us talk publicly. Yeah, it's Evan Hudson, 19 High Street. Just a quick comment. I know parking is a perennial issue in the village, so this comment doesn't go to parking in the village. I've got plenty of opinions about that, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. This comment's limited to High Street, where I live. 19 High Street is between Northern Avenue and Haldane Street. And those three streets are really the issue where this parking, this main parking concern I'm talking about relates to. Northern Ave, High Street, Haldane Street. Every weekend, it is packed wall to wall with cars. This is mostly trailhead parking, not village shopping parking, and totally abusive of our residential character, dangerous, filthy. I can all the typical complaints that everyone has, but I mean I looked out my window on Sunday, and out my front door I saw 50 cars parked just in my line of sight on village streets. 50 cars, I mean, that's a parking lot. That's not a park. That's not a neighborhood. That's a parking lot. So I realize there's a parking committee, and I realize there are a lot of stakeholders who need to weigh in, making a lot of really valid points. But I would still request urgent action in the area on High Street near the Tots Park to substantially restrict the number of parking spaces, even before a parking committee is constituted and before anything else gets done. I mean, it's an urgent problem. It's like an assault every single weekend. We are under siege near the Tots Park on High Street, and it's an urgent problem. So that's what I got. And thanks again for giving me a couple minutes to bring this to your attention.
Okay, thank you. We will take that into consideration. These are public streets, and it's hard to restrict areas. This is not just high streets being affected. I think if you went to any resident on any other street, they would probably have the same comments and the same outrage. So if we restrict parking there, that means you restrict park on every street, and these are public streets. I have talked to our attorney on this. You can't just really do that. That's simply, but, and if I could, I would do it somehow, but I don't see the solution, a quick solution like that. But we'll keep that in mind. Anyone else?
That is it.
There's two quick things that I did want to mention. One was a number of trees have been marked, big, older trees in the village. Some that are beloved, that have, are at the end of their life. And I just wanted to point out, there were some people concerned, and I think we had some letters in or phone calls. And kind of the gist was it didn't seem like people thought that the tree board committee actually cared about the trees or put a lot of effort in, and that this was just a last step that that they had to take that they didn't want to take. They have an arborist on board now, and they've had other arborists looked at all these trees, and they're a liability to the village. And they just, when you have an arborist say this should come down, more than one, a number of them, there's not much you can do. If something happened after that, I think we'd be in a really bad position. So I just wanted to point out that taking trees down is one of the last things that I would like to do, and definitely that the tree board wants to do also. They take that really seriously and try to hang on to trees as long as they can. And some probably have been let stay that shouldn't have been. So to all those out there, please be reassured that the tree board really cares deeply about the trees and doesn't take lightly taking them down. Unfortunately, a number of them have to come down right now. So just wanted to point that out. Also, last night I did get on one last ditch effort with the Putnam County and requesting that they would, reverse their decision on not giving any extra funding to the village for tourism, or so we can, mitigate some of the problems caused by tourism. I'm not sure how far that will go, but hopefully maybe we'll get something more. Not sure. Just wanted to let you know that did make a one last ditch effort on that. And that's all I have. So now we can get back to our favorite topics, and the code update review. We're still on 134. For all the people on Zoom, we will not be taking any further public comment, but on code review. But we will, you'll have plenty of chances at public hearings once we get everything together, and you'll be able to pick up what we have together. And also, we'll have open meetings, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in person sometime soon. If not, we'll work something out. Everyone will have plenty of time to make public comment. So want to take it away, Fran and Marie? And
We're at 134.17.
Right. Okay, so we ended up, I wanted to just go, we should pick up at 134.17, but there were a couple of questions that we had on 134.16. Let me just take a fast, I wrote myself a note. 130, page 59, 134.16 G4. I think you had answered a question, Marie, that we had last week. Let me go back and find it. Right, because my screen just died. My screen, okay, there we go. Okay, it's on page 59. It's for home occupations. And I believe there was a question that I saw an easy answer to. Oh, it was Lynn's question about Etsy stores. Maria, I thought you had gotten us an answer on that one for
Yep.
home occupations. Do you want to just touch that or not?
The topic was no on-premise sales of goods. I consulted with John first, and Etsy or eBay is not on-premise sales of goods.
Okay, so we don't. So we can just leave no on-premise sale of goods as is?
Yep.
Okay, so that takes care of that problem. Okay, should we go on from there or should we just move down to 17?
Well, we went through the rest of this chapter. Is there
Okay.
anything else that,
The next, in number 6, no person other than a legal resident of the premises. We crossed out members of the family. So we changed it to a legal resident of the premises, which I think was fine. You were just checking on removing the reference to family, and I believe we approved that.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go down to page 63. It's 13417.
So what about, there in red, there's on number 9 on home occupations 9, I guess it is. It's in red. Parking required, 134-17. Marie had a comment, parking required shall be, she was adding that.
Okay.
Are we accepting that, or Marie?
Parking required by 13417M should be provided on the premises. Marie, it seems like, were you going to check that or we're okay with that?
no, I wasn't going to check it.
Okay,
I didn't know there was a problem with it.
all right, not a problem. I probably just put it in the wrong place.
Yeah, it was just red. So just wanted to clear that one out.
Okay. Took care of that one. Okay, the live work. Okay. We're gonna move down. In the section that you added for Ted Fink, we're going to go back to at a later time when we go back over this again, right?
Let me give you a 30,000 foot overview on that.
Before we get to that, Marie, just at the beginning, live work units, that's highlighted. You had a comment, and or did Fran had a comment? Add MU zone was the heading to number 6, live /
Right.
units.
And I was saying, should we add inward zone, but Marie told me that there's only one place where live work units are identified as permitted, so we don't have to add the zone because it's only one place.
So we just accept that.
So we just accept that one.
Okay. Sorry, Marie, go ahead.
No problem. So the conversation with Ted Fink on gross floor area, net floor area, habitable floor area, and livable floor area. Habitable and livable have been removed from code. Gross floor area is used when identifying the entire space.
Mm-hmm.
And net floor area is used when identifying the interior space. So in general, that's how the two different floor areas are used within the code. He and I went through all instances of floor area in the code and reached agreement on which term should be used, whether it's gross floor area or net floor area.
Is gross floor area also, if you have like a 2-story building, the area is gross, the floor area of both the floors? Or
Yes.
how's that
Yes.
defined?
Of all the floors.
Of all the floors, right? Okay. And
Right.
it's the interior or whatever. I didn't read through the thing, so.
So gross is exterior and net is interior.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so
that's
where
good.
we've highlighted gross floor areas along, I believe we're still on 13416 in yellow. I'm just going to accept these.
Yep.
Okay, because you. All right. Why I have to unhighlight them for some reason. Okay.
Fran, the E and F are remaining in light blue.
No.
Okay,
Okay.
F
Yeah, I
is
just-
better. F is
okay.
better. E still has a,
E still looks like blue. It
okay, E
doesn't?
looks good now. E
Okay.
looks good.
All right. Okay.
Now, and in the conversation with Ted, if you look at I, the wording of this, he and I agreed was very confusing. So we have reworded that to be more understandable by deleting the phrase about one person who is 18 years of age or older and having a certain amount of square footage.
Okay, so we've gotten rid of all of that, including the residential space, and just made it
Right.
not more than 2 persons who are at least 18 years of age. Okay, moving down, we are now at 134.17. Okay. We're on page 63, 134.17. Accessory building or accessory structure, including a detached garage, is any building or structure that has a combined measurement of 16 feet or larger length, width, and height. Such a building or structure requires a building permit, must conform to all setback and lot coverage standards, regardless of whether or not the accessory building or accessory structure is on a foundation. Everybody good with that? That was, so that stays in the garages go. Underneath that, accessory building or accessory structure may be located on any required side or rear yard, provided detached garages should not exceed a vertical height of 20 feet. The vertical distance is measured from the average elevation of the proposed finished grade around 2 adjoining sides of the perimeter of the building, but not less than 3 measurements on each side of the building to the highest point of the roof for flat roofs, to the deck line of mansard roofs, and to the ridge line for gable, hip, and gambrel roofs. Those of you who are in construction understand what I'm reading, because I have no idea. So that's for.
Can we leave that and move along with that? Because I think we should really simplify our height to like just state what a height is, or at least we'll just leave that for now. We can get back to the height ones.
All right, notes, so we'll remember. I don't know if I spelled it right. B, detached garages shall have a minimum distance from the property line of 3 feet or the garage height times 30%, whichever is larger. We okay with that?
I guess.
That one's okay. Such accessory buildings and accessory structures, excluding detached garages, shall be set back 10 feet from any lot line, and if separated from the principal building, shall not be located less than 10 feet from it. Okay, 10 feet from the lot line, 10 feet from the building. That's excluding the garages.
So is the accessory buildings, that's in all the districts, or what districts is that?
All districts.
Okay, so are there districts or where the side yard setbacks are greater than 10 feet, or is that the?
Yeah, there are some where they are greater than 10 feet. Residential is 10 feet with exceptions. If the property is less than 62 feet wide, I think you get a percentage reduction, or 3-inch reduction for every foot less than 62 feet, to a minimum of both side yards must be equal to 10 feet. In R3, it is significantly larger than 10 feet. B1, I think, is 5 feet. B2 and B3 are larger than 10 feet. And B4 is also, I believe, larger than 10 feet. So the answer is yes and no.
I just want to, if they're in other areas and we're making an exception for accessory buildings, why would we want them closer than, you know, if there was a setback that was set for buildings, main residence or whatever, is greater than 10 feet, then why would we want an accessory building at 10 feet?
So what this is saying is that for an accessory building or an accessory structure, it has to be 10 feet from the lot line and 10 feet from the principal building.
Right.
We're not giving a shorter distance for any zone.
Marie, in B1, accessory apartments are not allowed, but accessory buildings are allowed?
Yep.
So in one of, I'm just confused a bit. So if there is, like, say in the R, in one of the districts, if a setback is 20 feet.
Yep.
This would say that in that district, you could put an accessory building up and it would only have to be 10 feet.
Yes, that's what this is saying.
So what's the rationale on that? If we don't want the building that close, why do we want a 1.5-story building that close? In that district?
Certainly this can be changed to be equivalent to the required setback for any zoning district.
I think that's what it should be. I think I mean, I don't know, anyone else have a feeling on that?
I
You
agree.
know,
I struggle to understand why there would be a difference between those in the first place. Like,
Right.
it should be uniform, I would think.
Yeah, I would think so. I know further on in this, I believe if I read properly, the accessory buildings can't be in the front, but they can be on the sides and in the back, but still, I don't think they should be any, they shouldn't be, on the lot line or anywhere different from the main building.
Well, the distance from the principal building is for safety. You don't
Right.
want an accessory building or an accessory structure close to the principal building for fire reasons. The side yard setback, the lot line setback, was to try to prevent the situation where somebody buys a shed from Home Depot or wherever, brings it into the yard and plunks it down on the lot line or very close to the lot line. And this was an attempt to prevent that. And Fran, I said, accessory apartments were not permitted in B1. That's not true. Accessory apartments are permitted in B1.
I thought I read, let me go back and just. maybe I
Not
read
in,
my-
not in B2 or B3.
B1. Look at 13410. G.
I'm sorry, 130.
13410G, it's on page 29. It's just before 13411. Accessory apartments and overnight accommodations were added. Now, I don't know if that was added by us, or if that was added prior to.
Okay, so I'm sorry, 134,
13410G.
yeah,
And number 4 under G says, this is the following uses are expressly prohibited. And 4 says accessory apartments.
this is in 10.
And 10, it's
10
page 29.
10 is B2.
I'm sorry.
10
Okay.
is B2.
Sorry. I numbered me wrong. Where's my B? Okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. This is B2.
Oh, Fran, you're such a pain.
I know,
Good.
geez, I had it all nice and neatly marked
God
so that I
damn
thought I knew
you.
what I was talking about. Geez, Marie. Ain't gonna get me smoking now. Okay, back to where we were. Okay, so accessory buildings are not allowed in B2. Accessory apartments.
Accessory apartments not permitted in B2 or in B3 or B4 or B4A. Stated a different way, accessory apartments are permitted in R1 and B1.
So as we're the first paragraph on 134.17, accessory building or accessory structure defines it. Such buildings or structures require building permit or must conform to all setback laws. Should it say something about where allowed? Accessory building or accessory buildings and accessory structures different from accessory apartments?
They are very different things.
Okay, so accessory buildings and or accessory structures are allowed every place?
Yes.
All right, I gotta go back and get my head on straight.
An accessory apartment would be a living space, an accessory building.
It's like a
not
storage shed.
necessarily. Right.
Yeah,
But,
storage,
okay.
storage shed, a dog house, if it's large, that large.
Very large dog house.
Okay, well, storage shed, I see storage sheds all around, okay. As we go on, I'll ask something else, but I thought I saw something else. All right, we're down to number 1C, such accessory building and accessory structures excluding detached garage. Excluding detached garages shall be set back 10 feet from the lot line. This is what we're going to question, right? Or do we want to change this? You want to change it here?
I just, Marie, you want to just look at that one again, like later or whatever, see if that makes sense. It seems like it should be the same uniform to whatever it is in that district, but maybe there's a reason it doesn't have to be.
So you're talking here about now.
Setbacks for accessory buildings. And
Yes, I've got that on my list to do.
okay, thanks.
Okay. Okay, number 4, an accessory building or accessory structure may not be used as a residence or an accessory apartment. Okay.
Which page are we on? Sorry, somehow I lost it.
64.
So,
Thank you.
okay. So
What
six,
What that
accessory-
says- sorry,
go ahead, Marie.
says is you can't convert a garage, for example, to an accessory apartment or a residence.
Okay, so this, everybody's okay with this? An accessory building may not be used as a residence or an accessory building or accessory structure may not be used as a residence or an accessory apartment. An accessory building may not be used for home occupation. Home occupations are limited to the primary structure on the tax lot. So you can't have like your business in your garage.
Correct.
So you can't have a dark room? You can't have a pottery studio if you happen to sell some pots?
That is correct. If you happen to sell some pots, if you have a dark room as a hobby, you can do that. But if your profession is photographer, then no, you can't.
So you can't turn your garage into as Lynn said, to sell your pottery where you create it and sell it.
Not to
Right.
not to sell it there, but let's say, let's say it's a studio of some sort or another, an artist studio. I would venture that a lot of people in the village have small accessory buildings like a she shed or something like that, where they use it as an artist studio of some sort or another.
If they're selling their wares, no.
Anywhere, even if it's like online.
Yes, correct. Even if it's online, no, can't do it.
Okay. All right, we good with keeping that?
I'm not, but I just think it's unrealistic and unenforceable, but.
Yeah, I think, I don't know what the downside is. I mean, unless it's delivery and stuff for somebody that's working, getting there. But there's like, the guy in the corner of Academy has a garage that's attached to car and it's a pottery studio and he sells his stuff, not out of it, but
Yeah, I mean, I
guess
know,
a lot has to do with insurance.
No, it has to do with the reason for doing this is that you're establishing an accessory building either because you've with kilns in it, with the potential for noxious odors, for whatever. That's not what the village wants for accessory buildings. If you want to create your wares for selling, you do that in your home.
what difference does it make? I just don't see that it makes any difference whatsoever, whether You know, whether I paint a painting in my shed out in back of my house or whether I paint it inside my house, what difference does it make? It has no impact on the neighbors at all. I think it's kind of ridiculously restrictive, especially considering how our economy is changing and will be, you know, there will be a lot more people trying to work from home.
And work in your home.
You might not have room in your home.
You might not have room in your home. You might be forced to. You might have to change your home office into a learning center for your kids. I think it's unnecessarily restrictive and harmful going forward to the population of the village. I think in reality, a lot of this already exists. And whether we know about it or not, I mean, I know of 2 artist studios and a photo studio, you know, within a block of my house, a block or so of my house, and it has no impact on anybody whatsoever. So, and I just think, I think it's harmful to, you know, I think we should be encouraging our residents if they can make a living from home. It's greener, they're not commuting, you know? And if they have a little shed where they keep it all out of their house and keep it all contained, you know, I don't see that as a bad thing. I mean, to assume that there's going to automatically be problems like noxious odors, I think is far-fetched. You know, yes, it's possible, but is it in reality? And secondly, I mean, how are you going to enforce this?
I don't think noxious odors would, I think that would be restricted by something else. I would just, I mean, during the discussions, Maria, why did people feel on the CUC? Why did they think that that's something that wasn't wanted, or what's the downside of that? Or what's the difference, as Lynn's saying, if you had a basement and you were working in a full, you know, full decked out basement versus your garage? What?
Right. So a full decked out basement is occupying the footprint of your building.
Right.
Most of the accessory buildings that currently exist in the village are in the corner of the lot, closer than the house is to adjacent properties.
Mhm.
And so you're exposing your neighbors to noise, odors, probably deliveries.
But that could happen to the house. I mean, deliveries are coming, and odors and noise are there's areas in our code that would prohibit that. So you can have something with odors coming out of your house and not have somewhere in the code saying that's not acceptable.
The only place where odors are discussed in the code is in the description of the general business in the B1 area, the MU area, and I think that may be it. I don't, B2, sorry, B1, B2, B3, and MU1 discuss odors and noise. Odors, noise, and other annoyances. It's not discussed in R1 or R3.
Marie, when an accessory building gets put up, they have to have a permit for it, right? At that point.
Today, no. Today, an accessory, if you bring in a shed from Home Depot or wherever, you do not have to get a building permit. This is intended to change that.
Right, and I saw the beginning of this chapter says it needs a permit.
Right.
So if we get a permit, how will it affect if somebody wants to have a home occupation in their new garage or their new shed or whatever? Can that be part of the permit process?
I'm not sure what you're suggesting. A building permit tends to reflect what the zoning permits or doesn't permit. It tends not to discuss the use of the structure.
Right, so there was-
In general terms, it tends not to discuss the use of the structure. That is
So there
not
would
true.
be,
Go ahead.
there would be no time if my neighbor has a shed in the back and decides he wants to turn it into some kind of a little business or occupation or whatever. There's no time that he has to go in now for another approval for that.
That is correct. Sorry, I take that back. If I'd have to look up how the home occupation is stated, whether or not a building permit is required for home occupation. I'll look into that.
Well, this seems to overlook something that if you have a shed in your backyard and you want to run power to it and all this other stuff that you might need to run a business out of, you will have to get a permit for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, are you even allowed to set up a, some type of, for example, something that uses a lot of power, like a kiln or something like that? If you applied for a permit to do that, would it be allowed?
I don't know.
It's a shed, you know?
As I said, I don't know whether or not a building permit is required for home occupation. I will look into that. The home occupation, sorry, the accessory buildings of which I am aware that are being used for a studio have heat, and in many cases, water and sewer.
Right. So that's
But in general, what they've done is they've just had a plumber come in and run the sewer line and the water line.
right, because, when I picture a shed, I'm not picturing anything with power or water, perhaps a light, maybe. But, it's a place where you put your gas cans and your mower or something like that, as opposed to somewhere where you could even, like when I picture a shed, I'm not even picturing a building where you could set an office up in it.
But an accessory
It's
building
awfully
could,
tiny thing.
it could be a detached garage.
Yeah.
Well, that's would be a garage then. So is a garage a shed? I mean, or is a garage an accessory building, or is a garage a garage?
A detached garage is an accessory building.
Okay, I understand. I wasn't putting those together, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with Lynn. I mean, maybe I need some time to think on it, but there's like so many people that have, that are doing stuff in a garage or whatever, which I don't see any difference in that in their building.
I mean, I know people who are running florist businesses out of their sheds.
I mean, I have a garage that I'm working at that I build stuff out of and bring it somewhere. And,
I'm going to
think
tell
it's not-
Charlotte.
Good thing it's not in the village.
no, I'm just saying, I don't think there's any difference if you had a garage. Say the guy at the end of Academy Street, I forget his name offhand, sorry. I don't think he's there anymore. But anyway, right on the corner of Academy and Main, his garage is like, I don't know how many feet, it's close to it. It's like, so it's closer to the other house. What's the difference between if he's in his basement working or on his first floor working or in his garage? It just, I don't.
He has air conditioning in there, doesn't he?
Probably.
Jeez.
I think he
go in
does.
He can have air conditioning. He can have water. The
Well, he has a kiln in
top
there.
of Mountain Avenue that are having their, they have that apartment that are the STR people.
Yeah.
They've got permits to put water in there. They have, there's nothing that restricts you from putting water in your building.
And they have a full bathroom in there.
Right. Well, I'm
You
not
know,
sure.
the thing is, it doesn't matter whether there's a bathroom in it or what heating it is or air conditioning or anything. There are so many good reasons to encourage people to try new occupations and run it from their home, whether it's in their home or out of a shed in their backyard. It reduces air pollution due to commutation. It makes communities safer because we've got people who are working at home and keeping an eye on the neighborhoods. There's all kinds of reasons why we should make this easier for people in the village instead of harder and more restrictive. To me, this seems arbitrary and I mean, almost a capricious law. Just, a thing just to make it hard on folks. I just don't see any benefit from it on the outside chance that somebody might use something stinky, or there might be a fume, or there might be some noise. Heck, I mean, my next door neighbor has a shed with all kinds of landscaping tools, and his guys meet up and go in and out of his driveway every day. And he has a home occupation that he runs, like Tony does snow plowing and stuff. And that comes out of the shed in the side of his house. It has no effect on me whatsoever, other than I get to wave to my neighbor who I know is at home and keeping an eye on the neighborhood. Instead of having him away and everybody else away and then commuting to some other place, I think this is a dumb law and we should strike it altogether.
I mean,
That's where I am. I'm done talking about it.
I agree with your,
Stinky line.
I agree with your, thinking that people should have businesses in their, accessory apartments. But however, the other side of your argument is it could be dangerous. Besides the fact that someone's there watching the neighborhood, they could also be blowing up the neighborhood with something that's
It could
dangerous.
be just as dangerous running a meth lab in your basement. It doesn't
this is
matter
true.
whether
It's
it's in your
also
basement or in the shed outside. It's the same danger. It's the same inconvenience to your neighbors. And for the most part, it's happening all over the village right now as we speak. And it's not hurting anybody. We're not
What,
getting
the meth labs?
out of it. So,
Hey, a wise guy.
yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
Finally piped up there.
All right, I put a question.
Substitute fireworks for meth lab,
I think there'll be, for one thing, if we leave this in there, there'll be a huge pushback at the public hearings, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I can't think of a reason that we couldn't mitigate somehow with something in there if we're worried about fumes or deliveries or something, or even deliveries. I mean, people are having them to their house, and what's the difference?
Yeah. I mean, how do you know which deliveries are coming from Amazon with a whole bunch of household supplies and which are, paints for the local artist who's painting the back? There's no way of knowing one or the other. It's irrelevant.
However, the home occupation definition restricts the number of trips to and from the house on a daily basis.
That's good.
So just keep that in mind.
Maria, which zones are allowed home occupation?
Pardon me?
Which zones are allowed home occupation? Is it all of them?
I'd have to go back and look, Fran. I don't remember.
Yeah, and I don't either. I'm sorry, I'm flipping through, but I don't really remember. If we allow this, we have to change the definition of home occupation, which now says clearly customary, incidental, and secondary use of a residential dwelling unit. So we have to change that definition if we delete this.
Say that again.
The definition of a home occupation refers to it being in a dwelling unit. It's the secondary use of a residential dwelling unit. So if we're gonna delete this, then we have to change the definition.
Just redefine that one.
Right.
Well, what's the definition of a dwelling unit? Is that the main unit?
Well, accessory buildings are not allowed to be dwelling units, I would assume, right? Accessory apartments are, but accessory buildings are not.
Accessory buildings and accessory structures are not allowed to be to have residential use.
So, okay, so I just put those notes. Do we want to delete this? And if so, do we need to change the definition of home occupation? So if we want to put that aside and come back to it, or do we want to just do it now?
Home
Oh,
occupation.
no, do not do it now.
Okay, so let's leave that as a question.
Which one are we leaving as a question?
The whole thing, what I wrote is, do we want to delete this?
Right. Okay.
And then the second part of it is, if we do delete it, we need to change the definition of home occupation. Because the definition of home occupation refers to something in a dwelling unit, and this is not a dwelling unit.
Okay. All right, well, let's just change that definition and edit that definition to make it more inclusive.
All right, then we have to go back and check the rest of the chapter to see where else home occupation is covered. Marie, do you want me to do that?
No, I'll take care of it, Fran.
Okay.
At what point would a home occupation require that your zoning is not correct, like that you need to be in a business or a commercial zoned area? Like, how busy could you get in a home
I think
situation?
I think it's all surrounded by the whether or not you can't sell out of it. You can, home occupation is you build or whatever, but you're not having people coming in and out of and purchasing. You're not making deals. You're not, working out of it. Literally having sales. That's my understanding, that it would be sales and having, customers actually coming into your house and purchasing whatever you're selling.
Yeah, see, I totally understand prohibiting that because you don't want to turn a residential neighborhood into a retail sector.
Mhm.
But having a home occupation in a small building on your property where, let's say, I'm imagining maybe someone makes tie-dyed t-shirts and sells them on the internet. And so it gets packaged up and sent away with one delivery a day, and they may get supplies on another delivery another day.
See, if we allow home occupations, we're either gonna have to define it and narrow it down to what we think is good and what we don't think is good, or not allow it. And, it could be a little bit crazy if we start going into what we think is acceptable and there's the whole, and what we don't. Selling tie-dye shirts is acceptable, but, doing some major something else maybe is not acceptable.
Like,
So I don't know.
like chainsaw sculptures, things like that.
Geez, if you got a big enough lot,
Well, that's what I'm picturing. That's why I wonder. I mean, I'm all for people running a business out of their home, or even, I agree with what Lynn's saying mainly, but, where's the cutoff there besides some odor and noise? If you allow, one person's side job or home job is quiet and the other person is out there, with tree stumps, carving them into giant eagles with a chainsaw or something like that. That's just what popped into my head, because you see a lot of that when you drive around. I was up in the Adirondacks this weekend, and everybody's a chainsaw sculptor in their front yard, and they're selling, different totem poles and things like that. But that could be a legit home business.
Well,
Something of
so
that.
are you asserting that in home occupation, the definitions that we need to come up with a list of acceptable home occupations?
No. We're not going to come up with a list of acceptable home occupations.
I'm just wondering where it ends or begins.
Coming up with a list of what is acceptable is just very dangerous.
Well, yeah, because there's always going to be an exception.
Yes, so that's why you don't want to have a list of this is what is acceptable.
So, I think for the most part, people who want, speaking from the perspective of somebody who kind of developed our business in our own kitchen, most of these are just small cottage industries that really, I don't know. I
think that if we're going to allow it, then I think there should be, if it's not there already, something about noise and something about smell or odors,
Function.
that,
there's a whole section.
and the amount of deliveries or
It
they can be
currently talks about deliveries.
Mhm.
And it also talks about noise. There's a whole section in 134.16 about home occupation. And so I think it pretty much covers it. It has to be compatible with the neighborhood. It can't change the look of the outside of the building. It has to maintain the residential character of the neighborhood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that may cover everything we need. So we have to just determine whether or not we want to leave this or take this paragraph out.
Let's hold on to it for now. I
Okay.
at this moment in time would say take it out, but
Okay.
let's look at it
Mhm.
and come back to it.
Okay, next paragraph says no more than 2 accessory buildings or accessory structures are permitted on any lot, including enclosed play structures. That sounds fine. Yes, no, everybody good?
Mhm.
Right. Okay, we move to corner lots. Marie, I got your note. Street lines, I guess I was looking in the wrong direction. I was changing the uppercase L to a lowercase L, thinking it wasn't defined, but it is defined. It's just
Yeah.
defined as, I guess, lines. Okay, it is defined. So I take my correction back on that and that. Okay, corner lot. Yeah, exceptions to, okay, exceptions to lot depth. Is this for corner lot or this is, no?
Exceptions to lot, sorry, it's scrolling. Exceptions to lot depths has nothing to do with corner lots.
Okay, so exceptions to lot depth requirements, the required lot depth of any point may be decreased by 25% if the average lot depth conforms to the minimum depth required. Sure, that's why I would have somebody else do this for me. Exceptions to yard requirements in residence districts. Do we want to say in R1, R2, R3 districts, or just leave it as residence districts?
If we leave it as residence districts, that allows, if additional residence districts are defined, you don't have to go back and change this.
Got it, okay. Exceptions to yard requirements in residence districts, permitted obstructions, cornices, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The only thing that was added to this paragraph is fence height is measured vertically from the natural ground prior to any grading, filling, or modification to the top of the fence at each point along the fence, excluding the fence posts where the grade is different on each side of the fence. The fence height shall be measured from the side with the highest grade. Fence posts are allowed to be 6 inches higher than the allowed fence height. Everybody okay? Moving on.
Mhm.
Existing setbacks. If 2 or more existing dwellings are located within 200 feet of each side of a proposed dwelling, except in the case of corner lots, then within
I'm sorry,
200 feet.
you skipped entries and porticos.
Sorry, entries and porticos are roofed over, but unenclosed projection in the nature of an entry or portico, not more than 8 feet wide and extending not more than 6 feet out from the front wall of the building shall be permitted to encroach on a required front yard. In computing the average setback in 134.7C10 and 134.8C11, the presence of such entries and porticos shall be ignored.
That's R1 and R3.
Okay. I'm just wondering, what is the front setback in R1 and R3 again, Marie? I'm
20.
sorry.
25,
Okay.
25 in R1, and I can't remember in R3.
I should be able to find it for you. R3. Required lot, front yard 25 for R3 also. Okay, so this is okay. Okay, existing setback. If 2 or more existing dwellings are located within 200 feet of each side of a proposed dwelling, except in the case of a corner lot, then within 200 feet on one side of a proposed dwelling, on the same side of the street and within the same block and same district, said proposed dwelling may have a front yard not greater than the average setback of all existing dwellings so located, subject to special use permit under 134.16. Okay. Existing non-conforming lots in residence districts in addition to the provisions of 134.19K for a lot that was under separate ownership from all adjoining lots on the effective date of this chapter, in which has a total lot width less than prescribed herein, which is proposed for use as a one-family residence. If such lot is less than 60 feet wide, then the minimum side yard shall be reduced to 7.5 feet, provided that the 2 side yards shall total at least 4 inches for each foot of lot width.
This is the small lot provision.
Okay, we're adding a section on accessory apartments. Is the intent of this section to allow the establishment of one accessory apartment located entirely within a single-family dwelling in order to provide an opportunity for the development of small rental housing units? Do we want to say entirely within a single-family dwelling lot? Should there be a
No.
word lot there?
No,
No, okay.
it's in the dwelling, not within the lot. If you were to say within a
Okay.
single family lot,
So-
you could allow an accessory apartment outside of the principal
Yeah.
dwelling.
Okay, so this is within the building, so I could make it my basement an accessory apartment.
Yes,
Okay. I don't want to do that. Too many people want some. In order to provide an opportunity for the development of small rental housing units designed to meet the special housing needs of senior citizens, young adults, single persons, and small households, to ensure the retention of single-family neighborhood character, to allow the more efficient use of the village's housing stock with minimal impact on community character and resources, to comply with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan to provide economic support for existing resident families. Consistent with the intent of this section, any owner occupying a single-family dwelling may apply to the planning board for site plan approval for an accessory apartment permit to seek the establishment of one accessory apartment. The planning board shall review such application, which requires a public hearing, and shall strictly apply the following standards. And then these are the standards below, Marie?
Yeah.
Okay, so an accessory apartment, this is not saying anything about short-term rentals, but can that be used for a short-term rental also?
we haven't discussed short-term rentals.
Right, no, I know that. I mean, but
It could be.
it
And
could be.
will
Okay, so everyone's good so far
Mhm.
with that much? With that much, okay. Strictly with the following standards, do we want to make this a colon? At the end here?
It could be.
All right. And then is this any application, is this really number 1? Any application for accessory apartment shall require submission of a plan showing the proposed accessory apartment and parcel survey. The planning board is not granted the authority to waive any of the standards set forth below unless such authority is specifically provided for herein. Accessory to the single-family detached dwelling, subject to the review and approval set forth herein, an accessory apartment is allowed in R1 and B1 zoning districts as a permitted use subject to site plan review and approval from the planning board. Okay. Compliance with district regulations, the lot on which the accessory apartment is to be located shall meet all bulk requirements applicable to a single-family detached dwelling as set forth in the schedule of district regulations for the zoning district in which it is located. Okay, now I'm confused.
If you have a structure that does not currently conform to the bulk requirements, then you can't put an accessory apartment in it.
A lot in which the accessory apartment is to be located should meet all bulk requirements applicable to us. Okay, gotcha. Okay, dwelling size. The minimum size of a studio accessory apartment, come on, I can do this, must be at least 340 square feet of gross floor area and at least 280 square feet of net floor area. The minimum size of a one-bedroom accessory apartment must be at least 410 square feet of gross floor area. The maximum size of an accessory apartment is 600 square feet of gross floor area. But in no case shall such accessory apartment exceed 30% of the gross floor area of the single-family detached dwelling in which it is located, whichever is less. The applicant shall submit a floor plan to scale of the single-family detached dwelling that illustrates the interior space within which the accessory apartment shall be created. Maria, is an accessory apartment only allowed in a detached dwelling?
Yes, only allowed in a single family detached dwelling.
Okay. Space with area, I'm just going through. Okay, we got rid of habitable, we got rid of space and area. Gross floor space. Okay. Thank you for your explanation of all my crazy questions before.
No. It was a math challenge.
I know. I was questioning whether the gross area was for one floor or for both floors, and what was the 30%, where did this 30% come from? And if it's a two-story building and the 30% can be fit into a one-story accessory apartment, and it just got complicated. It was the end of a very long sitting, looking at my computer session. Existing single-family detached dwelling. The principal single-family detached dwelling shall have been lawfully constructed and used as a single-family detached dwelling for at least 10 years prior to the date that an application is made for the creation of an accessory apartment. It doesn't have to be by the same owner though, right, Marie?
Correct.
Okay. Evidence of such use shall include the date of a duly issued certificate of occupancy for the single family detached dwelling or other evidence of use that the planning board finds adequate to establish that the single family detached dwelling has been lawfully established, maintained for at least 10 years. The planning board may waive the 10-year requirement upon an evidentiary showing by the applicant establishing that the accessory apartment will enable the owner occupying the principal dwelling to provide care for an elderly or disabled relative residing in the accessory apartment. Everybody okay? Owner occupancy required. A principal single-family detached dwelling within the accessory apartment is to be located, must be occupied at the time of application and at all times thereafter while the accessory apartment is established and maintained as a principal domicile for the record owner of title. Ownership shall be evidenced by the last deed recorded in the office of the clerk of the county of Putnam. Evidence that the dwelling is occupied as the principal domicile for the record owner may be established as an affidavit of record owner supported by voting records or such competent evidence as would be sufficient to establish domicile for purposes of voting. It shall be a condition of every C of O issued for an accessory apartment that occupancy of such dwelling unit is valid only if the unit is located in an owner-occupied single-family dwelling, and the C of O shall prominently display in bold print a statement that occupancy of such accessory apartment is not lawful and valid unless the single-family dwelling is owner-occupied. It's a new C of O when you have an accessory apartment?
Yes.
Okay. In the event of a C of O, the C of O is issued without such statement and shall not prevent enforcement of the condition. Nothing herein shall permit the establishment of separate ownership, for example, condominium of either dwelling unit. Okay, so you can't build an accessory apartment and make it a condo?
Right. Fran, you,
Okay, and I screwed that up, I see.
Yeah, can you
Yeah.
go? Okay, thank you.
Some reason or other, it was marking, I thought it was an extra space. Okay. Maximum number of accessory apartments, there should be no more than one accessory apartment in a single family detached dwelling on any one property. Accessory apartment is not permitted on any lot where two dwelling units already exist, regardless of whether one is a prior non-conforming dwelling unit or not. Maximum number of occupants, the maximum occupancy of accessory apartment is 3. Accessory apartments shall comply with all applicable requirements in New York State Uniform Fire Prevention Building Code and shall be maintained in a neat and orderly manner. Off-street parking shall be provided on the following basis: 2 parking spaces per unit. Parking space shall be provided with a backup, a turnaround area so that cars can park in the parking spaces are not required to back out into the street. This requirement may be waived by the planning board during the site plan approval process, so long as the public street or roadway is not classified as a state or county highway. The back up or turnaround area shall not be construed as nor used as a legal parking space. So you have to have 2 parking spaces for one accessory apartment?
Yes, just as you must have 2 parking spaces for a single-family residence.
So if this is a single family, you have to have 2, so now you have to have 4.
Yes,
That's not too much.
no,
Anybody? Yes, no, maybe. No use shall be permitted accessory to an accessory apartment. Each dwelling unit in the structure shall contain its own separate and independent bathroom and kitchen, entirely located within each dwelling unit. The accessory apartment shall contain no more than 1 bedroom, and no other space shall, in the determination of the planning board, be so configured that it could be used as a second bedroom, for example, a den, a sewing room, etc. No exterior changes or expansion which may alter its existing foundation, existing roof line, or existing facade may be made to the principal single-family detached dwelling, except for the installation of an entrance to serve, I just lost my page, to serve the accessory, where'd I go?
to serve the accessory apartment. The structure in which the accessory apartment is located shall have only 1 front entrance and only 1 entrance from any other facade of the structure. An exterior entrance leading to a foyer with interior entrances leading from the foyer to the dwelling units will be acceptable pursuant to this requirement.
Okay, thank you. Conditions of approval. In addition to the above standards, the planning board shall grant such application and issue the required accessory apartment permit only after determining that the issuance of such accessory apartment permit shall not adversely affect adjoining properties and the general surrounding neighborhood where the accessory apartment is proposed to be located. In the event that the planning board determines a proposed accessory apartment may adversely affect adjoining properties or the surrounding neighborhood, it may, as a condition of approving a permit, require the applicant establishes and maintains landscaping or fencing or other mitigation measures where necessary to avoid such adverse effects. It shall be a condition of the accessory apartment permit, whether or not specifically incorporated therein, that the owner shall maintain the accessory apartment use in conformance with the requirements of this section and all applicable provisions of the Uniform Fire Protection and Building Code, including but not limited to the Property Maintenance Code of New York State. And accessory apartment permit shall be valid for a period of 1 year from the date that a certificate of occupancy is issued for the accessory apartment, and that it shall be automatically renewed annually by the code enforcement officer upon submission by the record owner of an annual certification for renewal to be provided by the village, attesting that the principal single-family dwelling is maintained as the owner's domicile, and payment of a renewal fee in such amount as established by the resolution of the village board, provided the code inspection officer, after an inspection, if necessary, determines such use has been maintained in accordance with all requirements herein and all applicable conditions of approval. So I built an accessory apartment in the basement for my grandmother. Every year it has to be approved.
Yes,
So, and if I sell the house, does that accessory apartment,
If you go-
we have to
if you-
start from scratch?
if you go down to D,
Getting there. Okay, if the code enforcement officer determines at any time prior to the renewal that the use has not been maintained in accordance with the requirements herein or any applicable conditions of approval, the code enforcement officer shall give notice of such determination to the record owner. The planning board shall approve, disapprove, or approve with conditions the accessory apartment permit, subject to renewal. The planning board shall consider the code enforcement officer's findings in evaluating, excuse me, whether to renew the accessory apartment permit. And if it determines that it intends to deny such renewal or to impose additional conditions on such renewal, the planning board shall give written notice of its intent to the record owner at the most recent address shown on the tax bill roll of the village, provide an opportunity for the record owner to be heard on the matter, and shall consider any evidence submitted by the record owner in support of the renewal of the accessory apartment permit. Planning board shall thereafter approve with conditions, or deny the accessory apartment permit, stating the reasons for its decision. Transfer of title. Within 60 days after the record owner transfers title to premises for which an accessory apartment permit has been granted for an accessory apartment, the new record owner shall provide such evidence to the code enforcement officer as may be necessary to demonstrate that the principal residence structure is occupied by the new record owner in accordance with 134.16F of this section. In the event that the new owner fails to do so, the code enforcement officer shall serve written notice upon the owner or occupant to do so by a date certain. In the event that the record owner fails to do so, the code enforcement officer shall give notice of such noncompliance to the record owner and the planning board. And the planning board shall consider the code enforcement officer's findings in considering whether to renew the accessory apartment permit, and if it determines that it intends to deny such renewal or to impose additional conditions on such renewal, planning board shall give written notice of its intention to the record owner at the most recent address shown on the tax roll of the village, provide an opportunity for the record owner to be heard on the matter, and shall consider any evidence submitted by the record owner in support of the renewal of the accessory apartment permit. The failure of the planning board to take any action required by this section shall not constitute a waiver of any of such requirement. The planning board shall thereafter approve with conditions, or deny the accessory apartment permit, stating the reasons for its decisions. Okay, let me back up here and go through this. Okay,
Do you need a space there after the D?
where am I? I'm sorry, Lynn, where am I?
Just between those two sections, C and D.
C and D.
Transfer of title.
There.
There,
Okay.
you did it.
Okay, got it. Okay, so we are now at E, effective denial of renewal. The planning board shall direct that the accessory apartment pursuant to this section be vacated. Its use as an accessory apartment created pursuant to this section be discontinued, that all improvements installed to allow its use as an accessory apartment be removed. So I buy a house from someone who has an accessory apartment downstairs. If I decide I don't want to have an accessory apartment, I have to take out whatever, kitchen, bathroom, whatever.
What if you wanted it to be your home office?
Right, or you wanted, you wanted your kids to have, like, your kids are teenagers and they wanted a bedroom downstairs. So what do you have to uninstall?
I'm sorry, Fran, I lost track of where you were.
I'm sorry, I'm on E.
E.
I'm on page 71, effective denial of renewal.
Okay,
The planning board shall direct that the accessory apartment pursuant to this section be vacated, its use as an accessory apartment created pursuant to this section be discontinued, and that all improvements installed to allow its use as an accessory apartment be removed. That's the part that I'm questioning.
so what that says is if you installed a kitchen or a bathroom, that they would need to be removed. I
So what
would
if-
think that if you've installed a kitchen or a bathroom, you could request that the planning board not require that they be removed.
Okay, yeah, that was my question. I mean, especially a bathroom, you can always use another bathroom in the basement or whatever. So do we want to leave this as it is and then just have it as a exception?
I would leave that as it is and leave it up to the planning board's discretion.
Okay. Inspections. The applicant shall agree and acknowledge in writing to the village the understanding that should the parcel be sold, the code enforcement officer is authorized to conduct a site visit to verify that the accessory apartment is in compliance with the conditions of the accessory apartment permit issued for the property. Code enforcement officer or a duly authorized designee of the code enforcement officer may perform a fire, safety, and property maintenance inspection of the accessory apartment upon the request, of the owner of the property to be inspected, or an authorized agent of such owner or the occupant. In the event the code enforcement officer has a reasonable basis to believe the accessory apartment Damn, sorry. I jumped all over the place. Where the heck did I go?
Where were you? In the event that,
Okay. Got it. In the event the code enforcement officer has a reasonable basis to believe the accessory apartment or principal structure do not comply. Should this say does not?
it's the accessory apartment or the
Or
principal structure, I think it's
not
do not comply.
do not comply with the applicable provisions of the accessory apartment permit, section 134-16, or the Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code, and the owner or an authorized agent or occupant does not consent to such inspection, the code enforcement officer may apply for a warrant to permit such inspection. Nothing in this subsection shall permit such inspection in such circumstances unless such warrant has been obtained. An applicable fee shall be paid in an amount set forth in the fee schedule established by resolution of the Board of Trustees. An application fee, okay, got that. Accessory apartments shall not be used for overnight accommodations. All right, so if we decide to go with short-term rentals,
It says that it should not, accessory
this may have
apartments
to-
cannot be used for short-term rentals.
why? I mean, if we decide to go with short-term rentals, we may have to change this, right?
Well, no, you can still do short-term rentals, but you wouldn't be able, so what this would say is a short-term rental cannot be used, an accessory apartment cannot be used as a short-term rental.
So in other words, you can't just do it, build an accessory apartment and decide that you're gonna use it as a short-term rental.
Right,
Okay.
okay. At this point, I'd like to bring up a point that was brought up by Ted Fink. Ted thinks that the village should consider the creation of what are known as tiny apartments. Is it tiny houses? Tiny houses are houses that are no larger than 400 gross square feet floor area, which is 20 by 20. Single floor 20 by 20, that would be considered a tiny apartment. He points out that such tiny apartments can be brought onto a lot via on a chassis and then left there, which sounds very similar to a house trailer, except smaller. My response to Ted was that what we have seen in the village over time is that many of the small houses in the village become the receive requests to expand the house. The original owner of the house may have had only a need for a small house, not necessarily a tiny house, but a small house. But at some point, someone else buys the house and finds the house to be too small for their needs. And so they apply for a building permit to enlarge the house. And my response to Ted was the village, that these tiny houses would not conform to the current code, which permits only a single residential structure in an R1 area, and multiple, and in an R3 area, you can have multiple apartments, but not single family dwellings. So for those reasons, I did not think that the village should consider permitting tiny houses in the village. So I just bring that up. And those are the reasons for not permitting tiny houses in the village.
If we were to permit tiny houses, would we have to create a new zone? Say, for example, Marathon. Maybe he wants to build a whole bunch of you know, as one section of Marathon, or would we allow them like in a mixed use section area?
Well, they could go in a mixed use section, but if they are on a chassis, we have never wanted house trailers in the village. They
That's
could
essentially
certainly,
what it is.
yeah, it is, but it's
It's on
it's
wheels,
very,
it's a trailer.
right. So, I mean, you could construct a tiny house
Right.
on any of the lots on the Marathon property, but they'd be on a regular sized lot.
Right.
If you say, okay, we're gonna permit tiny houses on larger lots, and we'll permit 4 of them on a larger lot, what we're doing is we're increasing the density of any particular area, increasing the demand on the water and sewer services that we currently have, which doesn't seem to be the direction in which we want to go.
I agree.
Yeah.
If you
Now-
want to make a tiny house on a regular lot, then that's fine. Obviously, you can build
Yes.
whatever size house you like, but we can't be putting, splitting lots like Monopoly into four pieces, putting
I
4
just-
tiny houses on.
I just brought that up. I did do some research, and there are people that are very interested in having tiny houses. In the ones that I was able to find online, it was almost as if there was a tiny house park. So on, let me say 3 acres, I'm just throwing that out. The owner of the 3 acres rented out or leased out the land to multiple owners of tiny houses. And then the owner of the tiny house typically paid a rental fee to the owner of the property. Where the water and sewer came from, it didn't say. But it just seemed to me that increased density is not something that we're looking for from the village, number one. Number two, once the current owner of a tiny house wants to sell the tiny house, the new owner of the tiny house may or may not find that it is sufficient for their needs and could potentially look for expansion of the tiny house, assuming that the tiny house is not on a chassis. But my response to Ted was, I don't think that's the direction that we want to go in. But I bring it up for your consideration.
I don't see how we would be able to do that in this village.
I don't either.
Doesn't seem possible unless you just wanted to put a tiny house in a regular lot and hook up to village septic and everything. That'd be
Exactly.
fine.
Exactly.
And then if someone wanted to add to it, they would get a permit and they would do so. you know?
The only thing on our current code that would prohibit that is that a single family dwelling must be 600 gross square feet.
Right. Well,
So-
maybe that's where they get a variance or something.
Maybe.
So
Interesting.
I know
On
that
that note-
cities. Oh, I was just gonna mention, tiny houses are what a lot of big cities with large homeless populations are trying to get community housing organizations to fund, to provide safe and sanitary housing for homeless people. You know, it's something that really happens, I think, more in larger cities with, you know, parks and other unused land and stuff like that. I know in Portland, Oregon, they're considering doing some stuff like that. I've been talking with my sister about it. So,
Yeah, the
interesting.
examples that I saw, Lynn, about tiny houses were in more rural districts.
Oh.
And surrounded, very wooded. I didn't do a thorough research, but the ones that I saw tended to be in rural areas.
mhm. I've seen them there too. There was a place in North Carolina we used to go that had well, I mean, it was an outdoor concert venue out in the middle of the woods, and there were all these little tiny houses kind of surrounding this field where you could rent and camp in them. You know, it was basically like a camping cabin,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
essentially a tiny house. Yeah.
Very trendy.
Well, it wasn't trendy then. They were pretty shabby, but still
Well,
fun.
yeah, there's entire TV shows
Yeah.
dedicated to it now.
Okay, should we stop here?
I think it's
Sounds like a
appropriate.
plan.
Okay.
Now, would it be possible, Dave, that we could use whatever time remains tomorrow night to continue on with 134?
As long as we have Jeff posted and well, I think he has the meeting posted. I don't think we have to have an agenda. So yeah, we could go on. I'm willing to.
Okay.
Are we having the meeting at Village Hall?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have to take our computers down.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so we're doing executive session and then a regular meeting?
If time permits. If time and energy permit.
Yeah.
That's the punchline.
I trust you guys to make the right decisions, you know, about everything tomorrow. But if you can patch me in, but don't go to, you know, great lengths to try to work it out or
Jeff,
expect.
Jeff's on. Jeff, is there a way that we can have Lynn on the meeting tomorrow, the exact meeting? Or is
That
that,
would have to be on someone's cell phone.
Oh, you know, just you guys are going to make the right decisions. I trust you guys on that. So I'll
So
just,
then
No, I don't even know what we're deciding tomorrow.
if we go
I
on,
don't, I don't think we're deciding anything
Like,
tomorrow.
anything, hopefully?
Gonna listen to him.
if we go into chapter 134, can we get Lynn in? Or we'd have to Zoom, we'd have to open up to Zoom to do that?
We can all go home and then, which would take 10 minutes, and then we can all Zoom again.
That would, yeah, I don't have a laptop.
I think that
I'm
would
not
be
sure
better.
I have the time either. I have someone watching Sam tomorrow. So I'm not 100% positive I could do it after the meeting, but if I can, we'll be home, and if Sam's home, then I can do it. But I don't think I could stay at Village Hall other than to meet with Seth.
Well, if we're gonna continue on, we should just go home and we'll need a 5-minute break and then Zoom in. Can we do that, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, you have the credentials. It's the same.
Okay.
same login stuff.
Just
Okay.
do it. Okay.
Sorry to inconvenience you guys.
No, that's okay. So then I don't have to bring my laptop. We'll come home.
No.
Fran, I'll drive, Fran, so we can get home more quickly.
Okay. That works.
Be sure you're not gonna get lost.
We may decide not to come home. You know, there's a lot of options on the way home.
There are, yeah. All right.
I spoke to Dave earlier about next week's meeting. It is election day. His preference was to have a meeting
Yeah,
on Tuesday.
yeah.
The village offices are all closed that day, so, but we'll have everything prepared in advance. There will be bills. I talked to Michelle, and she'll have them ready on Monday.
Okay,
Okay.
Can somebody cover me on that
yes,
bill approval? Because, you know, I'm still quarantined.
yeah.
So,
You
Just
need
somebody
anything,
just-
Lynn?
oh, no, we're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So somebody just remind me that I have to do bills. I'll probably, Monday afternoon, I'll be pretty much tied up all afternoon, but I can either do the Monday morning or Tuesday morning. Just somebody give me a heads up and remind me to do that.
I'm around also, so whatever we need.
Michelle said she would have them there about 12:30 on Monday.
Yeah, that's not gonna work for me. If you leave them and just send me a text, I'll come in Tuesday morning and do them. Either that or I'll be online for election for like 10 hours. Or maybe nobody will.
You didn't go to vote? I thought you were
No,
going to
we're-
Carmel.
Well, I am on Thursday, but from what I hear, the lines are tremendous, so I may not decide to stand online.
Tremendous.
They said the 2 and 3 hour lines out there.
It's supposed to pour out too. You might not want to be in the rain.
So I may just decide to have no lines here when everybody else has finished voting.
Exactly.
That's what I'm counting on.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna look on Thursday when we go over there. And if it's not bad, I'll wait. And if it is bad, I'll just do it Tuesday.
I did it by mail.
Oh, you cheat.
Oh, you are daring.
Yeah, I don't trust.
I was
you know,
talking-
but you could check, and I checked, and it's been received, so.
So
Right.
Sure has, yeah.
I was talking to a
checked it?
senior, I was talking to
No.
a senior citizen yesterday, a senior older than me, senior, who said, I would feel weird if I didn't go to the polls on election day. I have to go to the polls.
Me too. Yep.
So anyway, so on that note, I'll see you tomorrow night.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a second by who?
3 seconds.
We
I'll
have 3
take it.
seconds.
3 seconds.
That's the, Seth's meeting's at 6, correct?
Tomorrow
Yes.
night's at 6,
Okay,
yes.
just making sure.
Good
Good
night,
night,
all.
everybody.
Good
Good
night.
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 Take care.
Didn't get
Good
a, who did I get a second from? Anybody? Who was the second?
Fran, me,
Fran.
Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Night.
Night, Kathleen.
Night, there she is. See ya.